In the quiet town of Elmsworth, nestled between sleepy hills and whispering trees, there was a high school named Ridgeview Academy. Among the laughter of students and the sounds of chalk tapping against blackboards, one boy sat silently, always there, but never really present. His name was Daniel, 16 years old, bright eyes, but a dim spirit. Daniel wasn't always like this. Just a year ago, he was the heart of the classroom, curious, loud, funny, full of life. But now, he barely spoke. His eyes looked tired, like someone carrying a weight far too heavy for his age. Teachers noticed, students whispered, but no one asked, except one. Mr. Hayes. Mr. Hayes was Daniel's class teacher, a gentle man in his 50s with kind eyes, gray streaks in his beard, and a voice that could calm any storm. He noticed that Daniel had stopped answering questions. He didn't laugh at jokes. He stared out the window during lessons, and every time someone mentioned family, Daniel's face fell just a little more. After a few days of quiet observation, Mr. Hayes decided to act. "Daniel," he said one afternoon, just as the bell rang, "could you stay back for a moment?" Daniel hesitated, then nodded. When the classroom emptied, Mr. Hayes sat across from him and said softly, "Son, I've been watching you for a while now, and I don't mean to intrude, but you seem distant, like you're carrying something heavy. What's troubling you?" Daniel shifted uncomfortably. It's nothing, sir." Mr. Hayes didn't push. Instead, he handed Daniel a slip of paper. "My wife's making lemonade this evening. Why don't you come over for a chat?" Daniel looked at the paper, unsure, but something in Mr. Hayes's eyes made him agree. That evening, Daniel arrived at Mr. Hayes's cozy little house. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow through the windows. Mr. Hayes welcomed him warmly and said, "Make yourself comfortable. I'll get us something to drink." Daniel sat on the couch, nervously glancing around. The house was filled with photos, smiling faces, family vacations, wedding memories. They all reminded him of something he had lost. A few minutes later, Mr. Hayes returned with 2 glasses of lemonade. "Here you go," he said, handing one to Daniel. Daniel took a sip and instantly frowned. It was far too salty. Mr. Hayes chuckled. "Too much salt, huh?" Daniel tried to smile politely. Yeah, pretty salty, sir." "Well," said Mr. Hayes, "should I throw it away?" Daniel shook his head. "No, sir. Maybe just add some sugar to balance it out?" Mr. Hayes nodded slowly, his eyes meeting Daniel's. "Exactly. That's what I wanted to talk to you about." Mr. Hayes leaned forward and said, "You see, Daniel, that lemonade is a lot like life. Sometimes we don't get to control how much salt life throws at us. Pain, loss, disappointment, they just happen. But we always have a choice. We can throw everything away, or we can add some sweetness." Daniel sat in silence. "You've been holding on to a very salty memory, haven't you?" Mr. Hayes asked gently. Daniel's eyes welled up. He looked away, but the tears fell anyway. "It was my mom," he whispered. "She died last year. Car accident. I was supposed to be with her that day, but I stayed behind to study. I keep thinking, if I had gone with her, maybe she wouldn't have been alone." Mr. Hayes let the silence stretch for a moment, then placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "That's a heavy burden, son. But blaming yourself doesn't change the past. It only destroys your present." Daniel wiped his eyes, but his heart still felt heavy. Mr. Hayes stood up, walked to a nearby cabinet, and pulled out a photo album. He handed it to Daniel. "Take a look." Inside were photos of Mr. Hayes as a young man, with his wife, his daughter, and another young boy. "Who's that?" Daniel asked. "My son, Ethan," Mr. Hayes replied, his voice quieter. "He passed away 10 years ago. Cancer." Daniel's eyes widened. "I was angry at the world. I stopped teaching. I stopped smiling. But one day my wife made me sit down with a glass of overly salty lemonade, just like this one. She added sugar until it was drinkable. And then she said, "Let's sweeten our life again, one memory at a time." Daniel stared at him, stunned. Mr. Hayes smiled. "The sugar doesn't erase the salt, Daniel. It just makes the drink bearable. So go out there, make some sweet memories, laugh again, love again, live again." The next day at school, Daniel sat in his usual seat. But this time, when Mr. Hayes asked a question, he raised his hand. It was small, but it was something. He smiled when a classmate cracked a joke. He stayed after school to help organize books in the library. He walked home slower, noticing things he hadn't before: the laughter of kids, the chirping of birds, the warmth of sunlight on his face. He even began keeping a journal. Each day, he wrote one happy thing he noticed: the color of the sky, a compliment from a friend, the smell of his favorite food. The salt was still there, but so was the sugar. Months passed, and Daniel started living again. But life, as it always does, had another twist waiting. One morning, Mr. Hayes wasn't at school, nor the next day. Then came the announcement: Mr. Hayes had suffered a stroke and was in the hospital. Daniel rushed there that evening, heart pounding. When he entered the hospital room, Mr. Hayes was conscious but weak. "I see you brought the sugar with you," he whispered, smiling. Tears flooded Daniel's eyes. "You can't leave me yet, sir. I'm just getting started." Mr. Hayes squeezed his hand. "That's why I can rest now. You'll carry the message forward." 3 years later, Daniel stood in front of a classroom, not as a student, but as a teacher. He looked at the rows of young faces, each one a little version of his former self. He placed 2 glasses on the table, one filled with salty lemonade, the other with sweet, and then he said, "Let me tell you a story. Life will always have its salt. Painful memories, regrets, losses, they're part of the recipe, but they don't define the flavor of your life. You do. You add the sugar. You choose what memories to create today. You decide when to stop drinking bitterness and start sweetening your days. Don't throw away your life because of a little salt. Add love, add kindness, add laughter, add hope, and with time, even the saltiest moments will become a drink worth savoring." Moral of the story: we cannot change our past, but we can change how we live from this moment forward. Life may add salt, but it's up to us to bring the sugar. The end.